What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first ever Moki Finance Show live stream. I am excited that I get to start a brand new channel, first of all. But second of all, I'm excited that I get to have a different channel that talks more about personal finance and not so much about investing. Of course, I'll talk about investing on this channel, but we're going to be talking everything personal finance. So, first of all, I want to welcome everybody that has come over to this channel from the regular Moki Finance channel. I appreciate every single one of you that have already hit that subscribe button. Hopefully, there's going to be many more in the future that will do that. So, cheers to you guys and hopefully to a good new beginning. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit interesting. I'm actually going to kind of introduce myself to you and my background, how I got started in personal finance, kind of what triggered me to become this personal finance guru, if you will. And then, kind of through the years, what are some things that I've done that have helped me get to the point where I'm at? So, let's basically start from the beginning. I don't know how many people I've shared this story with. If I haven't shared the story with you, maybe I've shared it with private members, but that's about it. But what really got me going in personal finance was a event that happened in 2017. And what happened to me in 2017 is I had a six-figure job that was a really cushy six-figure job. And I had that job for about 3 years and I lost it towards the end of 2017. And up until that point, I was doing a lot of stupid financially, but it was being covered up because I had a really good income. And my spouse, as well, at the time, had a really good income. So we didn't really have to worry about our finances. We were able to get by with our incomes. We were able to spend and live comfortably and go on vacation and drive brand new cars. And I even had a brand new motorcycle at the time and collect my credit card points. I was doing all that stuff in 2017. As far as my investments, I had no retirement planned. Really, I didn't know what retirement was even going to be like. So I said, you know what? I'm not even going to focus on retirement. I am basically going to live my life and get this money while it's coming in. And then, unfortunately, all that fell apart towards the end of 2017. I did lose my job, and it did basically force me to do one thing. It forced me to have a reality check. And my reality check was simple. Towards the end of 2017, my net worth was negative $14,000. Now, it's very hard to have a negative net worth. First of all, if you're a high income earner, it's almost, I want to say, impossible to have a negative net worth unless you really love debt. And that's kind of where my story begins in 2018, is the fact that we really love debt. So yeah, we made, a six-figure salary, but we also had about $87,000 worth of debt that we were paying back on. And all of that debt repayment was simply basically minimum payments. We would take out a car loan and make sure it was on 60 months or 72 months, and I would just pay the minimums. We would have my wife's student loans. She had a federal and a private. We would try to just pay the minimums. Our mortgage, we paid the minimum. Everything was a minimum payment. And then on the side here, we were spending money like crazy. So those two things were really the moment that triggered me to get better with money. One, the realization that my net worth was negative in 2017. And I was kind of ashamed of that. And I think not a lot of people talked about personal finances back in 2017. There probably wasn't a lot of YouTubers talking about personal finance. It was kind of a taboo topic. And quite frankly, it still is a taboo topic. So, first of all, it was shocking to know that if I just liquidated, if I was a business, because I have a business degree, if I just liquidated my household, which is technically my little business, I would owe more money than I actually have. So I ran my business poorly from the time I graduated college in 2012 till the end of 2017. So something had to change for me in 2018, and it did. What clicked was a vacation that we took, which was, we love to travel, and we still do this. By the way, we still travel, but it was a 2-week road trip, West Coast, hitting up a lot of states, hitting up a lot of national parks, and it was quite the expensive vacation. We didn't really cut corners when it came to housing. We stayed at some really nice hotels. When it came to dinners, we didn't really cheap out there either. We ate some really nice steaks, but it really started to kick in when I came home from that vacation. And what I realized was I got a lot of debt and I don't have a job that is going to basically help cover these debt obligations. So something had to change. So I had the talk with my wife. I remember still this to this day. I'm sure she does too. We sat down at our kitchen dining room table and we kind of had a realization moment of we're in trouble financially if we don't change our behaviors. So I mentioned to her that, I was ready to do a radical change, something, that's completely different than what we've been doing. Because previous to this change that I'm going to talk about, we tried to pay down the student loan. Some months we'd make an extra $100 payment, but it's really your when you look at it, it's like a mountain. When you look at debt, debt is like a mountain, and you putting $100 payment is not really chipping away at that mountain that much. So you had to be radical. And I came across Dave Ramsey, a fellow coworker, actually. It's a kind of a funny story, but I sat across from him and we're both in banking. And every day he would answer the phone to the clients. He would, when they would ask him, "Oh, how's your day?" He said, "Oh, better than I deserve." And I'm like, man, this guy's really annoying. Why does he keep saying this better than he deserves? So I said, what does that mean? Oh, he's like, "Oh, that's what Dave Ramsey says." I'm like, "Who's Dave Ramsey?" He's like, "What is this guy? He's a financial guy. He's on the radio." And I'm like, "All right, maybe I can listen to him." And at this point, podcasts were still, I guess, not becoming a thing, but Ramsey did have his podcast and his YouTube channel. But more importantly, that day I actually ordered the book, The Total Money Makeover. Uh, Funny enough, on my Amazon account, one of the last few times we used Amazon for a long time. And that book came pretty quick. It came, I think, in 2 days. And when I got the book, I read it cover to cover and I was super excited. I told my wife, I got it. It's like my light bulb moment happened. I know how we're going to do this. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy. Basically, this is one of my failed dumb ideas because I always had ideas. I always wanted to be kind of proactive and tackle this, but I never really executed up until this point. I was the idea man, but I failed on execution. So I kind of said, "Honey, we're gonna do this," and she didn't believe me for the first couple of weeks, and she had her reservations. She didn't like the idea that we would stop using our credit cards. She didn't like the idea that we're going to live on rice and beans. Although she's naturally a saver, she likes to hold on to cash. And I'm kind of was naturally a spender. Now I'm kind of naturally an investor, but I like to get rid of cash. So we did butt heads a lot in the beginning. Eventually, I got her to get the scissors out, cut up the credit card, and our journey began at the end of August of 2018. Good news to report, not that much longer. June of 2019 rolled around and we became officially debt free, not counting our mortgage. So this was sort of a really exciting moment in our life because we realized, hey, we just became debt free. And becoming debt free is a it's a feeling I can't describe to you unless you experience it. So for those of you guys that do have debt, you probably know what debt feels like. We all know what debt feels like, but that moment that you no longer have to worry about that debt, that is probably one of the best feelings I've ever felt when it comes to my money, and when it comes to really just having a lot of stress and anxiety and all types of stuff just ripped off my back, and I didn't have to worry about a single payment anymore. So once we became debt free, we said, wow, we could really pay off debt really fast. Now we both kind of got our careers rolling again from my standpoint and my wife, and income was getting back to where it was pre 2017 levels. Now, to be honest, 2017 was the peak of our earning. We never got back to that level. Even to this day today, we still don't make yearly what we made in 2017. So ideally, 2017 would have been the best year to do this debt payoff, but that's all right. It happened the way it did. I'm glad it did. And we realized after we became debt free, we celebrated, of course, for 1 month. And then we started the following month to basically invest for real. Now, previous to this, there was investments that I was making. These investments were, should I say, uh, play around investments. I mean, I had a Robinhood account. We, of course, had our 401ks at our employers. Didn't really know much about our 401ks, but we knew we were getting a free match. So we're putting away, I think it was 3% at the time. Small 401ks, they're worth a couple of hundred, maybe not even $10,000 a piece. And then outside of the Robinhood account, I had a little bit of a Betterment account, but I don't count any of that as investing. I think my investing journey for real, when I got serious, started in July of 2019. And it's kind of a interesting time as well, because here I am, someone who paid off debt. We went through that journey. We knew how to live rice and beans and how to really save a lot of money. And now I don't have the debt, but I'm still saving the money like I do. So it really, the accumulation phase in my investments started to kick up really, really fast, because, like I said, my career got back on track. My wife's career was doing well. So it didn't take us very long to reach our first $100,000 in our investments. By February of 2020, if you counted all of our 401ks and all of our different IRAs and our investment accounts, we reached $100,000. And this was exciting. And I mentioned this a lot to you guys. We did this very simply with both of our 401ks at the time were with Fidelity, and we could pick our options, our investments in there, and we both selected FSKX. The initial research that I did was actually kind of by a stroke of luck that I selected that fund in 2019, because I had heard of JL Collins. I knew of Jack Bogle at the time too. I read one of his books, but I've heard of J.L. Collins as well, and he talked about, put everything in VTSAX. Well, our 401ks were with Fidelity, so I said, hey, why not FSKX? So I used that kind of approach and that thinking, and by February of 2020, we reached this massive goal, which is no understatement, by the way. And I know a lot of you guys out here that follow me are probably striving to build your first $100,000 portfolio. And some of you have way more than that. That's fine too. But it shouldn't be understated how difficult it is to save this first $100,000. I think there's a quote either by Charlie Munger, or I don't know who the quote is by, but the first 100,000 is the hardest. And honestly, for us at least, it wasn't because we just transitioned from saving like crazy to pay off debt to now saving like crazy to invest. So we kind of had this goal of trying to save 50% or more of our income. And the funny part is, in the beginning stages here to build our first 100,000, we were actually saving a lot more than 50% of our income. So we were much, much higher than that, because we were still living on rice and beans. But then we kind of decided to back off. February, I remember we did go to Cabo for I think it was a week. And that was when that first taste of a bear market happened to me. And I saw that 100,000 kind of get wiped off for a little bit. So at the end of February, I'm sitting there at the airport. I remember landing and hearing about this talk about a new virus that's been spreading. And this was, still new in America. And I remember the stock market was reacting negatively, and my $100,000 net worth or investment fell at that time to, I don't know, it fell like 5% to 95,000. And I said, I've read about that this stuff can happen. And all the books that I read up to that point prepared me to basically stay the course and try to scrap up more money. And that's exactly what we started doing. And we invested a lot of money in March, in April, in May, in June, July, August. Basically, we went full force and found every dollar we could and saved every dollar we could. And we invested a lot of money. And that took us to basically January of 2021, where we reached our first $250,000, $250,000 mile mark in our net worth. So just to put this in perspective, going from 2017, a net worth of negative 14,000, to not that much later in January of 2021 to a net worth of $250,000 was something that really was unbelievable to me. There was, if somebody came up to me, or if my future self came up to me in the moments that I lost my job when I got laid off, and they told me, hey, in just less than basically 2.5 years, you are going to be worth $250,000. I said, there's no way that's possible. Like you're lying to me. But believe it or not, it happened in January of 2021. We reached that milestone. It was very exciting for a couple of reasons. One was we finally could see our investments paying off. So that time in March of 2020, April of 2020, May of 2020, June of 2020, where we were really scraping and still continuing to live like basically we had all this debt. After that, we were able to lift kind of off the gas pedal and say, hey, relax now. We just made it to $250,000. Let's take a moment and enjoy this milestone. And we did. We really did enjoy it for a little bit. And then it was back to work again. A few weeks later, the wheels got rolling again. And that takes me to our current net worth here today at the time of this recording, just a little bit over $325,000. Now, that in itself is amazing as well. I mean, January 2021 wasn't that? It was only 8 months ago that we were a quarter of a million. Now we're at 325,000. So it moves quickly. And the biggest thing that I want to convey to you is these numbers. I know the numbers are getting bigger, but I try not to focus so much on the numbers, and I focus on the percentages, and at what pace is my account growing compared to, say, the stock market. Because I think this process that I use can be easily replicated, whether you have $250,000 or you have $25, which I've shown you before with my M1 Finance beginner portfolio. All you need is $25. Same exact process. Of course, the numbers are going to look different, but that's okay. Everybody's got to be at the level they're at. That's their starting point. We all had different starting points. That does not matter. What matters is how are we going to strive to get forward with our net worth, with our investments, and our paying off our debt, and not really just sit there and tread water. And I think, in the early part, I was doing a lot of treading water. Now I have a really clear vision, a clear goal of what I want to accomplish, and I'm just full force ahead. So that's kind of where we stand right now. It's exciting, one, to be able to, in March of 2021, basically just quit my job outright and say, hey, I don't need this anymore. Not from a standpoint of the income didn't help pay bills. It did, but when you reach a certain status, and you have a net worth of 250 or 300,000, you have a little bit of a wiggle room, a little bit of a buffer where you can say F you. And that's another JL Collins term, by the way. I might reference him a lot tonight, but you can say F you to your bosses if you don't like the job. I actually did like the job I was doing, but I just wanted to change. I wanted to be more of an educator and less in a position of management or leadership. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to climb a corporate ladder just to say that, hey, I have this job title. My life has more purpose than that. And that's when I kickstarted, of course, the YouTube channel full time, which this entire time, by the time my debt journey my debt was paid off in 2019, I started the YouTube channel. I didn't make my first video until like October, but I started the YouTube channel in July of 2019 to basically share my journey. So it's an ever growing thing now for me. Of course, the main channel has kind of taken off pretty well, where it's paying some of my bills, and I've decided to now expand a little bit more and be more personable with you guys as well. I think I would love to do live streams on the main channel where I talk about myself and the journey, because I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but it's kind of difficult because as I mentioned in the past, the YouTube algorithm does not like it when I do that. So now we have a channel where I can be basically myself and not worry about if I'm talking about Fidelity Index funds or if I'm talking about Vanguard Index funds. I don't have to worry about that. I could talk about whatever I want to talk about, because this channel, quite frankly, I could care less if it doesn't get the views that my main channel does. That's okay, as long as I'm able to reach you, the audience, and have closer interaction and be able to give you more advice on on the steps or whatever step of the journey that you're in. So that's kind of the spiel. Now, another thing is my live streams tend to run really long because I get to comments, and I love reading your guys' comments, by the way. And tonight's not going to be any different. But the only difference is at 1 hour, we will be cutting this stream. It will be available again as a replay on this channel. It will be available on the podcast as well. So let's get into the comments and let's see what we got going on. So we got Mike Jones in the house, says Moki News Channel. Maybe Mike, maybe, I don't know yet. We got Conscious in the house, a private member from the Moki Finance Channel, says, I love the ticker. All right, thanks, Conscious. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm still I got to upgrade this software, but I'm still getting used to it. We got Progressive Jeff in the house. Big shout out to you, another private member. What's going on, Progressive Jeff? Here we go. We got Enrico Ramirez. Thumbs up to you too, Enrico. We got John in the house. What's going on, John? Great commenter on my main channel. Gratitude, yeah, for sure. A lot of gratitude. We got Mike Jones, says Dave changes lives. Yeah, let's drink to that. Dave changing lives. Yeah, he does, Mike Jones. I think Dave gets a lot of flack sometimes for being the way he is, but I think he's being himself, and that's a lot. There's a lot of people that can't do that. So I appreciate Dave. I appreciate everything he's put out into the universe to help so many people become debt free. I am indebted to him for that. At the same time, I no longer follow his strategies as far as his investment advice. But again, not a knock on him. And without reading his book and getting started, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So definitely, he does change lives. John says, I definitely use some of his Dave's suggestions. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, you have to figure out if it's for you. I know Dave says a lot, don't be Davish. You got to be on all 7 of the baby steps, but it's really, up to you. I didn't follow the baby steps to a T, and I still became debt free fairly quickly. I'm sure, again, if you want to follow the baby steps to a T, it'll work just as fine. It's whatever you want to be comfortable with. What Progressive Jeff says, sheer luck in the timing of when I bought and sold my house allowed me to pay my car loan and my student loan off in November of 2020. Total of about 30,000 debt free now. That's amazing. So what happened here? Sheer luck. Bought and sold my house. So you bought your house and then you sold your house, and I'm assuming you probably bought it at a reasonable price, and you had this little bit of a run up in the real estate market, which has been crazy now. But so it looks like you made some money and you used that money to pay off your student loan and your car loan to become debt free. That's awesome. I like that. Never a bad thing to become debt free. I think debt free has this weird stigma, like, oh, why would you want to be debt free? Well, again, if you don't like being debt free, nobody's going to stop you. Go back into debt. For me, I've been debt free, like I said, since June of 2019. I've never touched debt ever again. And it feels really, really nice. And there's nothing about debt that I miss. And if there was a point about debt that I missed, it's so easy. I can just take my title and go get a loan against my car. Very easy if that's what I wanted to do. So being debt free is a feeling, like I said at the beginning of this show, it's a feeling like no other on your finance journey of financial independence and financial freedom, because it's like the first step of you fully understanding not just in your mind, but also the psychology behind debt. I feel like debt is it can easily be compared to like those invisible chains on your hands, because it it limits you in very many ways that you might not think. Like if I still had debt, I probably wouldn't quit my job and come on here and do what I do on YouTube. There's no way I could do that. So those are those kind of invisible change that you don't see, but debt, once you get rid of it, does help basically liberate you. So Progressive Jeff says, being debt free, so liberating, such a great feeling. Yep, I agree 100%. And you know how it is now that you mentioned you paid off your, you sold your house and you paid off your car and your student loans. John says, I only have my condo to pay off. That's awesome, John. That's one piece of debt that I'm not mad at is a mortgage. Now I know, again, not to go. I'm not sponsored or by Dave Ramsey, so I don't have to follow his advice, and I don't when it comes to the mortgage part. It's nice to have your mortgage paid off, but at the same time, I think as you're striving to pay off your mortgage, you should still be focusing on the investment part. So you should have your Roth maxed out if you qualify for one. You should be maxing out your 401ks at work if you have them. You should be investing alongside of paying off your mortgage. And there's nothing wrong with paying off your mortgage early. I know the numbers behind it. A lot of finance people will tell you, no, don't pay off your mortgage early because you can just invest that money and get a better return. Well, if that's the case, then you should go get a second mortgage now. If you have some equity, you probably do. Get a second mortgage and then invest that money because you get a better return, right? So, that advice I think falls short in so many ways. I think let people decide what they think is best for them. If, John, for you, for example, if you comfortable with your condo payment and you don't have to pay it off early and you can take all that extra money and invest it, if that works for you, that's perfect. That's what you should do. So, that's where I stand on that part. Conscious says, I'm debt free and it's great. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Yeah, I mean, and that's another funny thing too is becoming debt free is like such a great feeling, but when people then ask you how's it feel, like it's I don't know. I would recommend you do it too, but I don't know how to put it in words other than the chains have broken off and now I can do whatever I want to do. So that's kind of how it feels for me. All right. Progressive Jeff says, I started contributing to my 401k in 2006. That's really, really good. But I had no idea in the world what I was doing, just like me, and maybe did 3% or 5% at most. Probably had some terrible active funds. Yeah, that's another thing, too. We go down this journey of learning about investing, but our 401ks are kind of, at least now, hopefully, I don't know how, in 2006, I think my first 401k contribution was 2008 when I was working for Lowe's. Man, that was probably some best investment money I could have ever. I ended up cashing that out, though I never rolled it over. But think about that: 2008, the bottom of the market's crashing. Here I am as a 18-year-old pushing carts at Lowe's and contributing to my 401k. One of the early mistakes I made too, Jeff, one is I only put in like 3%. Even I think my company at the time was matching 5. I only put in 3. And the second biggest mistake I made is when I left my employer, I cashed out my 401k. So I paid the penalty, the additional 10% penalty to cash it out early. And I have no idea what I did with that money. I blew it. Now, if that money just would have worked in the market for me, and from 2008 to now 2021, that would be some of my best investing dollars ever. But it didn't work out that way. But hey, you'll live and you'll learn, and now you probably know better. I know we've talked in the Discord too from my other channel, but you know how to pick funds now in your 401k. You're no longer kind of suckered into these active funds, which I'm sure in 2008 I was in some active funds. I have no idea. Another thing that I like about 401ks, at least the ones that I've had now, is there's a lot of target date index funds in them. So all you have to do is pick a year, and there's no, it can't be understated how important that can be to your long-term performance, because there's no tinkering. Pick one fund the year you plan on retiring or around there within a couple of years, set it and forget it. So I love that too. All right. Wasn't until early this year that I started understanding the market and taking it seriously. Yeah, and again, it's kind of interesting too. We as investors kind of go through this sort of phase of when you first are introduced to the market. You probably are introduced from a buddy or a coworker, somebody who's told you that they doubled their investment or 10x their investment really fast. In my case, that was what happened, and I signed up for Robinhood at the beginning of 2018, and believe it or not, I went into the cryptos, I went into the penny stocks. So yes, even me, now a finance guru, if you will. I guess that's a title I put on myself. I don't know if anybody else calls me a finance guru, but even me, I did invest in those types of investments early on in my investing career, all of 2018 and part of 2019. I was into a lot of speculative stuff, even rolling into 2020. I had a little account that I still speculated with my Robinhood investments, but I think I fully matured. Well, I don't want to say that I matured. Of course, there's still a lot of stuff to get better at and to kind of fine tune. But as far as getting a full grasp of how powerful, as I mentioned earlier, how powerful the percentage returns are, and not so much looking at, it's not reasonable to look at an investment and say it's going to double in 6 months. That's not reasonable. But to look at an investment and say, okay, well, if this can compound annually at 10%, what could this do for my wealth long term? So having that vision changed everything for me. And that's kind of where I'm at now with my investing as well. And I would say I'm taking it pretty seriously. Wish I did this a long time ago. Time in the market is key. Yeah, that's another thing too. As I mentioned, my 401k from 2008 probably would have been my best investment that I could have ever made in my entire life, and I squandered that. I was 18 years old. That I think those dollars that I put in were probably going to be worth over $120 each in the future if you just calculated the wealth multiplier for an 18-year-old. But you'll live and you'll learn. I think it happened the way it did, so that when I was finally ready in my life to embrace finances and personal finances, I embraced it. And it's never too late. There's always that regret of what if I did this earlier, but you're on the path that you're on now. Don't live in the past, and kind of live in the present and try to do the best you can with the circumstances that you're dealt right now. So I'm a big believer in that. It's Charlie Munger. Oh, that's the quote that I said. Your first 100,000 is your hardest. Charlie Munger. Yeah, I mean, I did listen to. Funny enough, before I decided to become a YouTuber, you know how you can get all those Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger interviews and stuff, and Bogle interviews, and so that was really how I spent my time trying to learn about investing originally. And then I decided to scrap that, and I picked up books instead. And I realized that through reading, I never really enjoyed reading in high school and college, but now for leisure, I love reading. So especially personal finance stuff. So I actually learned more through books than I did through videos. But there's certain comments and certain statements that still stick with me from some of these videos that I watched. I remember Charlie Munger was one of those that I watched. Jeff says, or Conscious says, Jeff, is yours through Merrill Lynch? My 401k has a lot of bad funds. Okay. All right. Erico Ramirez just started a month ago. You started a month ago. You started on your debt payoff, or you started investing a month ago. Um, Either way, like I said, it's better to start. It's better to start somewhere, right? So we all have to start somewhere. Doesn't matter where. You're on your journey now. Focus on your journey. Focus on getting better at what you're doing, and eventually, over time, you're gonna see it pay off in the long run. But nothing comes guaranteed in the short run. So that's something that's important to understand. Let's see. Currently, it's through Vanguard. Yeah, I don't think Jeff likes Merrill Lynch, Conscious. But back in 2006, it was a different store. It was with a different company. I had no idea what I was doing then. All right. Looks like you guys are having some conversations with yourselves. David Rico says Dave is the slap in the face to start. Yeah, he is. Like I said, there's nothing bad with Dave, and his program to pay off debt is amazing. But he sets you straight, right? Like I mentioned before, in my debt free journey, I tried to pay my debt off before, but I would just kind of dance around, and I would kind of be a half-ass about it, right? Like I would say, oh, here's an extra $100 towards my debt, and then I'd go out to the bar and spend 300. So I had my priorities were backwards. And then it wasn't really until I lost my job. I mean, Dave was kind of that voice of reason and said, "Hey, wake up." But it wasn't really until I lost my job that I was finally like, I have to change something. Otherwise, it's going to be paycheck to paycheck the rest of my life, and I'm going to be working the rest of my life. And I mean, for some people, I guess that's fine, and if that works for you, it works for you. But for me, I always felt like I had a bigger purpose in life, and I wanted to make a real positive impact and kind of leave society better than I found it, and in my own little weird way. And now I do this, and I get to interact with hundreds of people, and get to help so many people, and I love what I do. And again, if it wasn't for Dave, I don't think any of this would have gotten to the level that it's at today. Um, Jeff says, I feel like I wasted 10 solid years of investing, but at least now at 38 years old, I understand it and doing a lot of good things now, and it's not too late. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I wasted 18 to what is that? 18 to 29-year-old as my prime years to invest, but uh every 401k that I had from 18 years old to 20, not 29, 28 years old, I cashed in instead of rolled over. So it is one of those things that's frustrating looking back at it now. But at the same time, when you don't know any better, you just don't know any better. And I mean, there was nobody to really teach me what to do with 401ks. I didn't really care about them. I didn't show any interest myself. So, of course, I ended up doing kind of what I ended up doing. Um, Jeff, it's like a tree. The best time to plant one is 30 years ago. The next best time is now. Yeah, that's a good point. So, it's like if you have all these regrets, oh, I never started, and it's too late now, and you never get started. Well, that if you never plant the seed, that tree will never grow later to give you shade. But even if you have regrets about not starting, but you start today, you still have the potential of that seed that you're planting today to turn into a tree that you could sit under in retirement. So it's definitely important. Jeff says I like that. Chris Hogan quote. Oh man, Chris Hogan. I missed that guy. Chris Hogan, probably one of my favorite Dave Ramsey personalities, but unfortunately, there was that whole scandal with him. I don't know what he's doing now. He's probably got some kind of non-compete clause, so he's not on the air. But I used to listening to his podcast. First of all, his book, both of his books, Retired Inspired and Everyday Millionaires, but especially Everyday Millionaires, was a really good book. But he kind of had this one, he had the voice for radio and podcasting, but he had this good sense of humor about investing, and he called people out on their dumb not just investments, but their dumb money decisions. And he was really able to mix entertainment and personal finance, which can be a really dry topic. I could be sitting here probably boring all of you right now the way we're talking about it. But Chris Hogan had this really special way of kind of entertaining and talking about personal finance. So yeah, he was one of my favorites as well, Conscious. But sad that that had to come to an end. John says, I was 17 grand in credit card debt and very uneducated financially. I turned to the internet and YouTube and got edumacated thanks to guys like you. I work overtime, budgeted, and threw money. Yeah, and the internet is kind of crazy, right? So I recently I have this kind of weird, I don't know if it's the algorithm that's putting me into this stuff, if I'm searching too much for it, but um I've gone into this weird part of YouTube that I'm seeing really bad advice when it comes to investing, especially when it comes to investing, and it's coming from really popular YouTubers. And I know that they're doing it for views, but I can't for the life of me grasp why YouTube is pushing those kind of videos versus kind of more of an educated piece. But it is what it is. But yeah, sometimes you can learn a lot of useful information from people on the internet like myself, and sometimes people on the internet like myself could have no idea what they're talking about. So it's always good to take that kind of advice with a grain of salt. I like to read before anything else, and mainly now I find myself reading a lot more than watching YouTube, especially now that I'm a content creator. It's kind of hard to watch other content creators. I've talked about this before, but when you know how the sausage is made, it's kind of different. You don't want to eat the sausage anymore. So I know the kind of work that goes into content creation, and I know uh, by watching somebody's video, probably a minute in, I'll know if they did their homework or if they're just full of it. I know one guy that keeps coming up in the Discord, Rob Berger. I've watched one or two of his videos. I think Conscience, you're the one that recommended it. He's got good stuff, and I agree with probably 99% of everything he says on his channel. And right away, I knew everything he talked about was going to be good. And then there's a lot of other people, and I was thinking about doing some reaction videos, maybe on this channel specifically, to a lot of different YouTubers and the advice that they give, because a lot of their advice, if you just use your head and you just fact check them. I don't want to sound like I'm this fact checker, which I'm not, but if they made claims in videos, I don't know, 8 months ago that a stock was going to 10x, and if you just go and pull up the stock chart on that chart and check the time they published the video to the time of whenever you check, most likely that those stocks have, instead of 10x, they've actually lost like 50% of their value. So there's a lot of that in YouTube, and I don't like that, but there is a lot of good educational stuff. So I know there's a lot of guys like me that are pushing the educational stuff. On the debt like it was fire. Yeah, you gotta basically go crazy. Gazelle, or what does Dave say? Gazelle intense, or gazelle intense, I think is what he says. Um, your index fund reviews helped me a lot. That's good to know. Yeah, so I like doing those. I had a really good time actually doing those on the channel. One, because I wanted to show you guys. I never like coming on and saying you should invest in this, or this is what you should invest in. I like to show you the process of how to come up with investments on your own. So if I review a fund and I break down the turnover, the expense ratio, we go over the composition, we look at past performance, we look at tracking error, we look at the index it's tracking, we look at distributions. Those are some key metrics that I look out for when I select funds. And I'm not claiming that, I'm perfect at picking funds. Obviously, I made a mistake earlier with FISVX, but I'd like to teach people how to do it so then they can go out on their own and do it. Versus if I just sit here and say, buy this fund, maybe that fund would work for me and my risk tolerance and where I'm at in my journey. But maybe you're at a different point. Maybe you already have $1 million and it's probably not a fund for you. Or maybe you have $1,000, and my advice always to those people is just focus on an S&P or total market fund if you have that little of an amount, and focus on getting your first 100,000 that way. So, I'm glad that you said that, Erico, that, it helped you. And that's really the main reason I did them. And they were actually successful videos, which kind of surprised me that YouTube was pushing them, but that was an extra positive to those. John says it took me 6 months to be debt, or 16, I apologize, months to be debt free. That's really fast, John. I think the average person, if they're going to pay off debt, it should take somewhere between 12 to 24 months. You shouldn't have debt hanging around like a pet for 18 years and, living in your spare bedroom. You should attack it quickly, attack it early and often until it's dead, and then you get to enjoy your life. So that's really quick, 16 months, and did a good job there. 401k, in my experience. Let's see what Jeff is saying here. You come on the job, the recruiters tell you to take the target date funds, and if you don't know any better, that's what you do. And again, target date funds, there's two versions. There's a mutual target date fund and an index target date fund. Believe it or not, in one of my 401ks, they had both. And of course, they don't really specify which one is better. So you really don't know if you know nothing about investing. But yeah, the index target date funds all day long. And it's loaded up with active management and bonds for 20-year-olds. Sucks. Are you talking about the mutual target date funds? Now, the index target date funds, they should not be loaded up with active management. They should have things like VTSAX or FSKX in them, and FTIHX on the international side. Now, this is a downside of target date funds that maybe are not the best for beginner investors. They do have sometimes 5 to 10% allocation to a total bond market fund, where as a beginner investor, you don't need that. But again, it's a one size fits all investment. It's hard to match up everybody's risk tolerance. So by adding a little bit of bonds, they're kind of playing to both sides. But I know now they've started coming out with like a conservative, moderate, and aggressive target date fund. So you can pick an aggressive target date fund. Not every 401k plan has this, by the way, but you can pick an aggressive target date fund that might not have any bonds. So I've seen that as a new product now as well. So if that's something that works, definitely would recommend it. And I mean, anybody who's 20 years old should not be in bonds whatsoever. But that's just my opinion. Let's see how we're doing on time. We got 15 minutes left. All right. John has a question about FISVX. I recently purchased shares based on your recommendation and my own research. And I saw activity on my account that said short-term capital gain and long-term capital gain. I think this is a two-parter. Let me see. Yes, it is. Can you explain why the fund show that activity? What does it mean? Yeah, John. So I did a video on this too, trying to explain it. I forgot what I titled the video. I think you should know this about Fidelity Index Funds is the title of the video. But essentially what FISVX is, it's a mutual index fund that tracks the Russell 2000 value index. The Russell 2000 value index and any small cap value index in itself is very volatile, and it turns over a lot. The top 10 from quarter to quarter always look different. So there's companies coming up, companies coming down all the time. So there's a lot of turnover, kind of by design. That's how those indexes are. The stocks are a lot more volatile than a large cap. Now, what happened with FISVX? A couple of things happened. One, it's a new fund that got incepted July of 2019. So I didn't have a lot of data to do my research and say over the last 10 years, how has this fund done compared to the index? All I had was basically 1 year track record. And the 1 year track record showed no red flags. There was no crazy capital distributions that I saw. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. So I said, everything I read says don't invest in new funds. Let them work out the way they should work out. And then maybe later, 5-10 years down the road, invest in them. But I went against my gut feeling and everything that I knew, and I still invested in it because I really wanted to get exposure into small cap value, and I wanted to do it through Fidelity Index Funds. Now, this is the only offering from Fidelity that's an index fund that's low expense and that tracks the Russell 2000, which happens to be the index that I like tracking. Just like I like tracking the S&P, the Russell is like the Russell 2000 is the S&P. Well, I guess the S&P 600 is the small cap of the S&P, but basically it's the more popular version, the more popular index and the one that's been around longer. So it's the one I like to track. And what happened with FISVX is basically a lot of short-term turnover happened in 2020, heading into 2021. And the fund only pays distributions twice a year. So it pays distributions in August and in December. So that turnover that was happening from basically inception, July 2019, till quarter end, Q2 end of June 2020, it didn't trigger any capital distributions because the fund had lost money. And even heading into December, the distribution was very, very small. It was like a penny or something. It was barely anything. So that misled me to believe that this fund was not going to have a high turnover. And when I looked at the annual report, the turnover for December of 2020 was like 21%. So I said, great. This fund had a high turnover of like 77%. It's come down to all the way now to 21%. In August and December, I'm not seeing crazy distribution history. I'm going to load up on this fund. And that's exactly what I did. Basically, from December all the way until now, I've been loading up on this fund. I think if I just do the real quick math, probably about $25,000 worth of this fund I've bought in a really short amount of time, in like 6-7 months. And then August happened where it had the distribution. So the distribution happened because the fund from December of 2020 to basically end of July or end of June of 2021 had a lot of unrealized short-term capital gains. So I looked at the top 10 in December of 2020. That's quarter four of 2020. And I looked at the top 10 of quarter two of 2021. Completely different. So one was GameStop, AMC, and all those kind of meme stocks. GameStop got pushed out. AMC got pushed way up to the top. I think it's the first or second holding. All the original top 10 fell out to 15, 20, 25th places in the fund's holdings, and all the spots that were 20th and 25th had made their ways to the top. So a lot of buying and selling in that short 6-month period created those short-term capital distributions. And the way short-term capital distributions work is if you buy a stock and you sell it in less than a year, it's considered a short-term capital distribution. If you buy a stock and you sell it after a year, it's a long-term. Now, because we are investing in the mutual fund, the fund managers control this. It's out of our control. We cannot control what's going to happen. So basically, the fund manager was trading a lot. Again, it was justified because that's what the index was doing. I went back and I basically looked at VTWV to match up the top 10, and the top 10 were changing exactly like VTWV. So VTWV was doing the same exact thing as FISVX. The only difference is VTWV is an ETF and FISVX is a mutual fund. As a mutual fund, the taxes, the capital distributions get passed on to us, and we're taxed on them. So if it's in a taxable account, you're on the hook for short-term capital gains, which was distributed at, I don't know, about maybe 60% of the distributions were short-term. So that's a tax that's going to be at your ordinary income, whatever your regular federal tax rate is. And then the long term is going to be more of a qualified rate, a more favorable rate for you if this isn't a taxable. Now, if this is in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, it's either growing tax-free or tax-deferred. You don't have to worry about that as much. But one thing going forward that I will keep a close eye on when it comes to FISVX is this fund's turnover going to be an issue going forward? So I'm going to give it till the end of the year. I'm going to scout it out and really look at it, and then I'll make a decision on, and of course, I'll tell you guys before I do anything if I'm seeing something that's out of the ordinary. But right now, as of right now, this was a one-off thing. Of course, it could repeat in December, and we'll see and kind of reevaluate from that. But hopefully that answers your question. Rob Berger, super legit. Yeah, he is. He really is. I have it in my Roth IRA. Okay, so in your Roth IRA, the worst thing that can happen now is all of these distributions might create a tracking error for FISVX compared to the index. Of course, that data is not out yet for the fund. According to the prospectus, is going to report its July numbers basically 2 months after the end of July. So we have to wait till September, end of September, to get the July and August data. But we'll see in August how those distributions are affecting the tracking error. And if there is a crazy effect on the tracking error, yeah, it might be a good idea then to jump out of that and jump into another small cap value fund if that's what you want to do. Concha says, Rob Berger, you and the Money Guy Show are pretty much my top 3 YouTubers. Wow, I can't believe I'm in that category. Thanks, thanks for that, Conscious. Let me just finish up the rest of these questions really quick as our stream's ending here. Is Fidelity high turnover rate good on non-taxable account as Roth? A high turnover is never good because there's a lot of hidden fees that you don't see, but that affect the bottom line performance of the fund. So ideally, you want to find funds that have low turnover, and large cap funds should be under 10%. And then small mid cap funds, you should look for something 20 to 25% at the most. All right. And John says, oh, and I found your video searching for Fidelity Index funds. I like your style and tone, so I keep coming back. Thank you for that. The steaks look good, Moki. Oh, they were good, Jeff. I'm sorry if I'm low energy on this live stream tonight, but I pounded a few steaks before the live stream, a few New York strips, and yeah, they were good. Oh, we got Scott in the house. How's it going, Scott? Hope you're doing well. John says, thank you for the FISVX explanation. I guess I will hold on to it for now. Yeah, I mean, again, it's up to you. I will report anything that I do and I see. And if so far I'm not gonna have a knee jerk reaction because of one distribution, but of course something can change later, and if it does, I will report right to you guys on that main channel where FISVX. I made a lucky call when I said, FISVX is going to do really well this next decade. So far, it's doing really well, but there is some fine tuning I could have done there, maybe with a different small cap value fund, and I do see that. So we'll keep a close eye on it. And so far, it's done really well in my Roth and in my traditional, so I'm just kind of leaving it alone. Erico says, so if I understand right, taxable use ETF, non-taxable use funds. Yeah, and you could really use ETFs all around. They're just harder to automate on services like Fidelity and Schwab and Vanguard. But if you have like M1 Finance, that's all you can do is use ETFs, and that's probably the simplest way. Whatever helps you automate. The key to investing is not so much what you're invested in, but how consistent can you be with your investment. So for me, like I have the Moki 3 strategy that I started in February of 2021. By the way, let me share this with you guys before I sign off. So this is my Moki 3 strategy. Let's see here. I'm going to show you. All right. So I started the Moki 3 right here. So right here in February of 2021. And basically you could see here, since I started the Moki 3 strategy, I'm averaging roughly about $1,100 a month in gains from the Moki 3. This is everything before this was pretty much, for the most part, the S&P 500. I had a little bit of large cap growth. It was very minimal. Everything else was S&P or FSKX. So this is how I was doing it with the market, and now this is how I'm doing it with the Moki 3. So for you, I again, it really depends what strategy, one, you want to go with, and two, what's the strategy is going to keep you invested for the long run. And for me, it's the strategy that I created for myself. So I'm not going to abandon a strategy, one, that I named after myself. Kind of narcissistic there to name that after myself. I probably should have picked a different name. Anyways, two, it's a strategy that I really did a lot of research, and I said it fits my risk tolerance. It fits how aggressive I want to be, and it's a strategy that over the long run should do a little bit better than just owning a total market fund. So that's the idea behind it. But at the end of the day, go with whatever you're comfortable with. That's kind of the best advice I have. So that's it. We're going to wrap this up. I want to thank all 9 or 10 of you that were in this first live stream. I know that's not the numbers we usually see, but I appreciate all the private members: Conscious, Scott, Progressive Jeff, John, and Erico. Did I miss anybody? I know you guys are the last two. You're not private members, but you guys were lighting up the chat, so I appreciate you. I think I got everybody else. Mike Jones, I missed you at the beginning there. Shout out to you. So thank you guys so much for participating in this first ever Moki Finance Show live stream. Again, this will be available on the playback for those of you guys that missed it. This will be a podcast episode sometime tomorrow afternoon as well. The next one we're going to schedule is going to be Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to aim to do these, as you can see there, at the bottom of the page. We're going to aim to do these basically every Tuesday and Thursday. Now, there probably will be some Tuesdays or Thursdays that I might have to miss because of certain obligations, or maybe I might change the times around a little bit. I don't know. We'll see kind of how it goes. But right now we're testing it out. I think tonight was a success. I had a blast talking about, first of all, my journey, and kind of getting that out to you guys, for those of you guys that didn't, kind of know my story and how I came about to becoming what I am today. And then two, really my favorite part of live streaming is engaging with you guys. So it's been a blast. I want to thank every single one of you again. Conscious, you too, have a good night. Take it easy, John. You guys make these. Without you, there would be no show. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we'll test this out for however long I feel like I want to do it. And if nothing comes of it, at least it's another platform that I have where I can come and engage with you on a more personal basis versus that other main channel. I want to leave that for investing, and it's kind of like the bread and butter now of making me, the income from YouTube. So I don't want to play around with that too much. I'd rather come on here and be able to engage with the audience, and you guys being the true fans that you are. Thank you so much for subscribing to the new channel. All right, until next time, guys. Remember, move obstacles, keep investing.